Hello and welcome to this episode of the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. I'm your host Marcus, and today we're talking to Teju from the Unreasonable Institute that enables and caters to high-impact entrepreneurs. So first of all, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Marcus. Thank you for having me.
So why don't you give a little background on yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Well, my name is Teju Ravilochan. I'm one of the co-founders of the Unreasonable Institute and serve as our VP of Partnerships and Communication. A couple of years ago, 2009 is when we started the Unreasonable Institute, right out of college. And we started because we were relatively frustrated by the fact that in college, our education wasn't really preparing us to tackle the world's biggest problems. And we needed a place that young people in particular could go to learn systematically from those who knew how to do it, what it would take to fundamentally reshape the world, to address problems like poverty, like climate change, like oppression around the world. And so that's sort of the build up to the Unreasonable Institute.
And you already mentioned some cases that you aim to solve, but why don't you also introduce the Unreasonable Institute, what it is and what it's all about in a nutshell?
The Unreasonable Institute is a very simple idea. It's a mentorship and training program for entrepreneurs tackling social and environmental problems. So basically what we do is select about 25 entrepreneurs each year and then bring them out to Boulder for 6 weeks where they all live under one roof together. They eat all their meals together. They basically spend all their time together as roommates, as friends, and as a peer support community. Then we bring out about 50 mentors who range from the co-founder of Google.org to the CTO of HP to an entrepreneur who's lifted 24 million farmers out of poverty, who guide them as they work to launch their own ventures. Then we bring out consulting organizations who provide them legal advice, design consulting, etc. for free, as well as about 25 different major impact investment funds who they have the chance to develop relationships with. And finally, they have the chance to pitch to several hundred investors, both in San Francisco and in Boulder, to raise the capital that they need to move forward. So the fundamental goal here is to enable these 25 ventures to not only effectively address a social or environmental problem, but to do so in a way that's financially viable, that's financially self-sustaining, so that it can scale rapidly to meet the needs of at least a million people. So that's the Unreasonable Institute in a nutshell.
And where does the name come from?
The name comes from a quotation from the Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, who once said that the reasonable man adapts himself to the world, the unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man and woman, as of course we add. So that was the inspiration for the name, and it truly describes the person that we're after. It takes someone who's a little bit crazy to ignore conventional wisdom, to ignore all the skeptics out there, all the reasons why they might fail in attempting to tackle a massive global problem. But those people who are just crazy enough to persist through that, to weather that potential storm of failure, are the exact kind of people that we believe in and want to support. So that's why we called it the Unreasonable Institute.
And you started out in 2009, right out of college. So how did you actually take the Unreasonable Institute from an idea to an actual program?
It's a great question. I think honestly is we just got started. One of the first things that we did is understand, what the sort of burning itch was for us. There are these massive problems around the world. There's a whole generation of young people who's eager to address them in some capacity, but needs to learn from those who are proven practitioners who have made headway in tackling these problems, how to do that. And so we actually did a very thorough market analysis, looking at all the organizations that we could find that were in any way helping young entrepreneurs in particular to take ideas to an implementation stage and then to scale. So we looked at Ashoka and Endeavor and Acumen Fund and a variety of other groups. And all of them had strong models, but few of them were focused on the young, early stage, high risk entrepreneur. The best model that we found actually for working with that demographic was not in the social enterprise space, but in the tech startup space. It was a group called Techstars, also based in Boulder, where we are, and they're an accelerator for startup entrepreneurs in the tech space. So what they do is bring 10 companies to Boulder every single year for 12 weeks. And while in Boulder, these 10 companies receive mentorship from the likes of, the people who work at Yahoo and Google and Facebook, at IBM, those sorts of places. And at the end of it, they have a demo day where they pitch to investors to raise capital. And that simple model has been so effective that 70% of the ventures that have gone through Techstars are fully funded and profitable in a year, in an industry where notoriously only 1 in 10 startups will make it. And so we realized that there's huge potential in this model, and that was the exact model that we wanted to replicate. So we took that idea and sort of built the foundation of the Unreasonable Institute using the Techstars model. And then, we tried to go to where the action was. Where were the people that we wanted to connect with and talk to? We really focused on social capital and building relationships first. And so, we would sit down with anybody who was willing to speak with us to get their ideas, advice, feedback, guidance, etc., and to get them involved. And when we shared with them the vision that we had, the belief that we had that we can't afford to send this next generation of young entrepreneurs into the world without preparing them to tackle the world's biggest problems, they were very excited about it, especially when we many times found someone we believed was one of those people who could mentor these young entrepreneurs, who could adequately prepare them to go out and tackle these global problems. And so, we at a few conferences, we were able to secure some mentors, which started giving us some momentum. My teammate Daniel Epstein, who's the founding president of the Unreasonable Institute, had actually run something of a pilot the summer before and developed relationships with the University of Colorado, who were willing to provide us free space for the Institute. And, we really started trying to do various individuals and organizations favors by introducing them to one another, by trying to spread the word through Twitter and online media about their efforts. And they really started to appreciate that. That opened a lot of doors and a lot of ears. People started to agree to partner with us, to work with us, and eventually we built, enough relationships that others showed up and were able to see that something was actually forming, and that was what really got us over the initial activation energy.
You mentioned that Boulder is naturally quite a hotspot for entrepreneurs, which is, well, I guess, natural because of many reasons, like Techstars and so on. But that ecosystem must be very crucial for the entrepreneurs that you attract. So what does that ecosystem in Boulder look like? For example, since you naturally need to have a good context for your program, was Boulder the only choice for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely don't think that Boulder is the only choice, but there's something really remarkable and unique about Boulder because there is a thriving entrepreneurial community here. Forbes magazine a couple of years ago said it's the second best city in the United States to be an entrepreneur after San Francisco. And a lot of that is, Boulder is small. It's about 92,000 people, and 30,000 of those are students at a university here. But, that university attracts a lot of brilliant minds. Boulder's a beautiful natural setting. We've got 300 days of sunshine, incredible mountains. So that brings to Boulder a lot of incredibly intelligent people. And because of how much Boulderites value the environment around them, they tend to be very conscious about food and the environment and those sorts of things. So the combination of the two lends itself quite nicely to entrepreneurial activity as well as paying attention to social and environmental issues. What makes a program like Techstars or the Unreasonable Institute possible is how willing the community is here to be of service to aspiring entrepreneurs and to one another. Almost anybody you ask will sit down and talk to you for some time, give you their thoughts, give you their advice, and that's a really unique thing about Boulder. And in addition to those tremendous entrepreneurial assets that Boulder has, one thing that's also great about Boulder is that in many ways it's not New York, it's not San Francisco, it's not a place that people see as being incredibly on the grid, incredibly connected at all times. So when you do bring out mentors and entrepreneurs to Boulder, there's nowhere else for them to go. In the sense that there's lots to do in Boulder, but pretty much you've taken them out of the community that they're familiar with, And so, it creates something we call the island effect,